Today, we're getting the insights and wisdom from Kevin Manthei, a prolific music composer with decades of experience. Kevin has some credits on world renowned IPs, including Spider Man, Batman, Transformers, Star Trek, Tron, Robot Chicken, Invader Zim, Nancy Drew, Shrek, Ben 10, Veggie Tales, Neverwinter, King's Quest, Civilization, and even more. In 2019, Kevin won a BMI Award for Robot Chicken and is also the founder of Triumph Audio, a sample library company. Kevin, thank you for making the time to be here today.
Thank you. So that was great. I forgot about some of that stuff.
King's Quest is an old game I used to play, so
Oh
that one was one of my favorites.
man, yeah, that was one of the first games I scored. King's Quest 8 for Sierra. For Sierra, was it Sierra What was it? Sierra Interactive. Sierra. I'm
I think
forgetting.
so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, amazing.
Out of all your work, is there anything that holds the most special place in your heart?
Gosh, when I first started scoring Invader Zim, there was something about it that I knew was really special, and that I had this like forward thinking thing, like I bet someday this will be, I'll look back and this will be one of the most special projects I worked on. There was just something about it at the time. It was so edgy and different, and it was also my first animated series that I scored. So it has a really special place in my heart for that. I also got nominated for an Annie Award for it. And I didn't even know what an Annie Award was. It's like the Emmys for animation. And they called me up and said, "Hey, you got nominated for an Annie." I was like, "An Emmy?" They're like, "No, an Annie." I was so excited, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, wow, what's that?" So, and then working with Jonah and Vasquez was awesome. And then like we had this crazy moment of like 20 years later, they did the Florpus movie. And then to have to come back and revisit the work that I did 20 years later, 20 years later, but kind of try to come up with a new sound, but also pay homage to the past. That was a really fun challenge.
Yeah, as I understand, there's a very passionate fan base for that as well.
Yeah, that's probably the most fun part about it too, is people are really excited about it still to this day.
Do you remember your first professional gig that you got and how you got it?
Hmm. Well, I mean, back when I grew up in Minnesota, back when I was in Minnesota, I think I did like some guy had a driving school, and he wanted some music for his commercial, and so I didn't even know how much money I was going to get. And, I wrote this track and he really liked it. I brought it over to him and he played it up against his cheesy commercial. And I think he gave me $50 or something. I didn't even know I was like, oh, $50. I'm like, cool. But um, professionally, I don't know, like right after USC, when I went to USC for scoring for motion pictures and television, I met a bunch of cool people like Chris Beck and Marco Beltrami and John Ehrlich. And I started working for those guys, like just doing various odds and ends, and got to write some additional music for, this and that. And it was like really cool to like do something and then see it that it was on TV, and that it was like you wrote something and people heard it, besides people, besides your significant other that you want, hey, come and listen to this for 50 times.
Once you got your foot in the door, did the work come in through a lot of referrals or was it challenging? Did you have to work with agents?
So I had an agent for a while, and then sometimes you end up chasing the agent instead of chasing your own work. So that worked out fine for a while, but basically, I would say for most composers in the business, there's a very small amount that sort of don't have to hustle and don't have to network or do warm outreach or any of those kind of things. They're very fortunate that the work just keeps kind of piling in. But for a lot of us, um, I would say, unfortunately, I'm in the camp where it's like, you still have to be like, talk to the old producers and the old directors and all the people that you've worked with in past projects and be like, hey, how's it going? What's up? Here's some links to some new things that I've worked on. Here's what I'm working on now. You want to get lunch, you want to catch up on Zoom. So there's just an element of, like in any business, you have to stay relevant, you have to stay up to date. You also have to let people know that you're still out there working and that you exist. So if you don't kind of do that through various means, people just inadvertently forget, that you're around.
How valuable did you find the university education? And do you think it would be as valuable today if you were starting over?
Um, that's a good question. So it depends. Like, there's a lot of really good film scoring programs now. So USC was invaluable for me and really it got me to move from Minnesota, where had a 4-year degree in theory and composition, which was more of a, standard music degree, which was good, but you're not really learning anything about the real world, to coming out to USC, which was like 1 year of intense just studying, and it was all about the real world and all about film scoring and all of that. So that was very good and very relevant. There's a lot of good programs out there for that. Berkeley School of Music is very good about being more real world, and I've worked with a lot of people who've come out of that scoring program. UCLA has an extension scoring program that's pretty good. So yeah, I would say it depends. It depends on what you want to do with your music, and it depends on, where you see yourself, and what you like to do music related. So that's how I would pick a school. But just blindly picking the school nearby that has a quote unquote music degree, and you want to score films, you're gonna have to figure a lot of it out on your own if you don't pick the right school.
I saw that you offer coaching and mentoring. Do you see any trends there, or is there advice that you find yourself giving over and over?
Mm. Uh, I have a saying, like when I'm talking to people and they're composing, I like to say layer, 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 which is, you have to have a lot of texture and interest in your music. You can't just have a string pad and a piano. And I mean, unless that's what's called for. But if you're doing a big, huge, epic orchestral thing, you've just got to have, all 90 players of that orchestra playing, and plus all the synthesizers and epic percussion and choir and all that. So it's got to really get big and meaty and beefy. And the only way to do that is to really know how to orchestrate, inside the computer or in real life, and really get the music pumping and getting big. Um, as far as mentoring and things, now that I'm further into my career, I feel like I have more to say, more to give back. So it's a really fun way to do that. I'm a tutor with ThinkSpace out of the United Kingdom, which is Guy Mitchell Moray's program. It's just a really excellent way for people all around the world to learn how to score for film, for media, for games. They have some songwriting and sound design courses as well. And they have all these real world tutors like me. I'm just one of many, many, many of these people. And we can do one to what we call it one to ones, which are basically just Zooms where we talk about their assignments, give professional coaching on whatever it is that they need to work on. And then I'll even grade some assignments now and then to kind of give people some real world feedback. And I like that because I like to treat that as though whatever assignment they're doing is an actual assignment from a producer or a director on a given project, versus like something that needs to be graded. It's like, is this working for the project? What would the producer or the director, what kind of feedback would they give you? And how would a composer, interact with that feedback and keep the job and make the producer, director, client happy?
When it comes to your composing process, have you refined it to a step-by-step process that you follow, or does it change still?
Um, yeah, I guess, it obviously revolves around a piano to some degree. Like, I'm a piano player, so it's like there's 88 keys involved. So I have an 88 key controller down here. And I think that depending on what piece it is and what style and the genre, then it'll depend on like, what sound do I pull up first? Is it a string patch? Is it, a guitar? Is it piano? Is it just a piano to get a melody idea? Is it a drum kit to get a rhythm down? So I would say that kind of changes per piece and per what I'm working on. Um, a lot of times too, I like to just let my brain sort of work on the problem before I even sit down to start writing. Sometimes it's like I'm working on something that has to sound like more like a from a ancient Greek kind of sound. And so for me, it was like finding some really good samples and sample libraries that will inspire the music a bit. So getting the correct kind of percussion, the correct kind of flutes and, you know, wooden flute kind of sounds and various things that would give you that sense of the time period. And then maybe even doing some research, listening to other things, hearing some chord progressions that might inspire you. All that kind of percolates in the brain before you even sit down and start writing your own music. You have to kind of, I think a good film composer is someone who kind of knows what's come before them so that they can bounce off that for the future.
So most of the time, are you rendering out stems, or how often are you providing sheet music?
Sheet music never, unless you'd be recording with an orchestra or you're having a session player come over or a small ensembles. That's when you do sheet music. Otherwise, everything is done, inside. Because we say done inside the box, which just means you're sequencing on your computer. You have your sample libraries and your virtual synthesizers, and maybe all your tabletop synthesizers. It's all feeding into your digital audio workstation, your DAW, and then you're doing a recording inside of that machine. Um, Back in the day, you would use the computer, but then you would output off to a DAT tape or to another computer, or you would record to analog tape or whatever. You would record. You could use the computer, but then everything's going through a mixer and is being recorded on some kind of platform, some sort of machine. But now, like just the mixer, the recording, the synthesizers, the reverbs, everything is literally inside, 1 to 3 computers, depending on the composer's setup, which is really cool. So yeah, there's really depends. You're always going to be doing that inside the DAW, even if you were going to have some sort of session with players. You still have to have that good mock up and you have to have that good, you have to flesh it out. You have to play it for the producers, directors, get their approval before you have the real thing recorded.
Got it. So is this how Triumph Audio was born? Was it out of filling a gap that you needed, or how did that come to be?
Um, so I mean, since the beginning of composing, I always was really interested in sound. Like we did a lot of crazy sampling for Invader Zim. In fact, one of my second sample library, Road Trip Percussion, has one of my favorite samples that I ever created. Was My parents live in Minnesota, and there was this really awesome metal slide that was just like a kid park slide, and I banged on that a bunch, and my assistant at the time, sampled it and put it in Giga Studio format, and I use that all the time. And then there was another really great one where Jonan had this idea of like it was a super creepy thing going on in a bus with all these kids, and he had this idea of like recording that awful sound of a balloon, like when you have the air in the balloon and then you just slowly pull it open and it just well, that sounds incredible, like slowed down with reverb and stuff. It's the most nastiest sound. So I, I don't think I've released that. I got to put that on a library somewhere. It's somewhere in the vault. So I've been sampling for a long time, and I've also been recording myself playing instruments very badly for a long time. And it's just, I think no matter what you're doing, and if it's all inside the box, as we say, using samples and other people's sample libraries, it's always really great to record yourself playing a lot of instruments. And so I've been doing that for years and years, created my own creepy sounds and interesting sounds and effects and all kinds of stuff. And so it just was always in the back of my mind, like, should I do this? Should I like extend myself even further and like create this sample library and just release, some sounds and that I've been creating? Because what was happening was I've been making so many sounds, I just don't have enough time to use them all myself, and I wanted to share them with, composers that think creatively and cinematically and think a little bit outside of the box, from sort of traditional sample libraries. We're far from traditional and really like to just see where the sound takes us, in every library. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, it sounds like it was almost a byproduct of all the work that you've done.
Yeah, it was definitely like, one of those things where you say it's a passion project, right? Like I wasn't like, oh, let's do this. This seems like a good, thing to get into. Is like, well, this is what I love to do. I love to compose and I love to create sounds to use in my composing. And I think very much like a modern film composer. And I want to take all of that kind of knowledge that I've, gotten over the years and put that, then kind of bring that into Triumph Audio and create a thing that way.
You started it all by yourself, or were there any partners involved?
Yeah, it's me, but I have a couple different people. I mean, we're kind of like, we just added our a collaborator page on our website, so we've got like, I mean, 10 to 15 people that have helped with various things like, which I can get into, but primarily it was me and my assistant Royal, who is just what it was so helpful to have someone else to start this journey with, because I didn't have enough time. It was almost like a full time thing. So between he and I, he helped keep me accountable and sort of did the things that I'm maybe not as comfortable doing or don't find as enjoyable. And then I was really able to just really focus on the creative and the recording and the manipulation and all that, and then send that over to programmers to program. And, and then there's just, running a business, it's like you've got to have the back end, the how do people download it, how do they buy it, where do they go, all the stuff. What I realized through this process was composing is a lot simpler in the sense that, you get the job, you work with one person, you work with the people, you're generally speaking, you're in your room by yourself working on it, and you don't have to be thinking about marketing it, or like how you're going to upload it, how you know who do you send it out to, and who do you have to talk to, all these various people. You're just kind of focusing in on that one thing, and you write the piece, you send it off, it gets approved, or you make changes, and at the end of it you get it all together and you throw it at them, and they deal with it all, right? But with Triumph Audio, it's just like with a business, you're from the idea all the way to the very end. There's probably like a couple hundred steps involved from the idea of a library to actually releasing it. Releasing it is just the beginning. Then now you're marketing it and you're, getting the word out and all that kind of stuff. And then you just kind of start the cycle over, because we're at 13 libraries. So we're trying to release one I would say probably every 6 to 10 weeks is a new library. And so that's kind of it's just kind of the cycle. It's like Groundhog Day. It just kind of keeps keeps going, but with different stuff.
I saw on your website you had built a really nice studio. Is that where you're doing a lot of the recording?
Yeah.
Is that where you are now?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Looks
Yeah.
great.
Thank you. Yeah, we have I've got my main room here, which is my main writing room, but it's also a control room. Right to the left of me is a huge window that looks out into the scoring stage, which also doubles as a home theater for me and the family. So it's kind of a dual purpose. And that so we've recorded a lot of stuff in there. I have a video of Arco Anomaly that I just released on the socials of me conducting a small orchestral ensemble out there that we sampled. And then I've got right behind me, you can see that window right there. That looks into what I call the drum room, which is sort of a room where I have all my instruments that I've been collecting over the years. And Super Ball Bang, which is coming up in April, we actually recorded it in there because we wanted a more the scoring stage has a really nice kind of 1.5 second natural kind of decay reverb, and then there it's much more treated and quiet. So we wanted just a more damped down kind of sound for the initial raw data, raw audio on that. So we recorded in there. And then I've recorded in here too. This room has a really great sound. It's really, really quiet. I recorded Ghost Ukulele in here, and we have an upcoming preschool library that I recorded in here with stereo microphones. One thing I really like to do is record even single instruments just in stereo. I just think it gives it a lot more presence and just I just think it sounds better. So that's kind of the one of the things that I like doing.
That's very cool. It's
Yeah.
awesome that you it's also like a fun place for your family.
Yeah.
Me and my wife were watching an old interview you did, and you had your two daughters with
Oh,
you
yeah.
talking about how they were even back then contributing to some of your work. And
Yeah.
then we found that one of your daughters who plays the cello was involved with the ghost cello and some of those libraries. Do you consider it like a family business now?
No, it's more like, hey, can I convince you to play your cello for me? And they're like, okay, well, what's my schedule like, and that kind of thing. So so on Ghost Cello. So Ghost Cello One, I had a really awesome cellist who's really fantastic, William Elzy, who's kind of a family friend. He is a family friend and an amazing musician. So that was we did that one that way, and then I was like, I want to go a little darker, more gritty. And Piper, my daughter, who plays cello, she just is just very. I've come to find out that like when I record her, she's just very experimental in the way she approaches the cello, and almost in like a less musician kind of way. Like she'll do things like she'll bow or scrape things like you're not supposed to do that. Like the Juilliard people wouldn't be happy the way we were playing the cello, and we would just experiment. It would just be like, I'd have ideas, but then also she'd just start to go off on these tangents, and I'd let's go, let's roll with that. So we did like 3 or 4 sessions, over the course of actually a couple years, just here and there. And then I would go off and edit, and a lot of the magic kind of comes with me editing the raw material as well. That's kind of a part of our staple and signature. So my other daughter, Keller, plays viola and is actually a really good singer. So she's a soprano. So we also did a couple sessions, which ended up on Arco Anomaly, my newest sample library. It's a string library, and I had Piper and Keller both in the room at the same time. So we had cello, viola kind of combos. And so then that was really fun to have them both playing off of each other. It created some amazing drones and textures. And then towards the end of the last session that we were doing, Keller just started singing into the microphone and just starting to do the weirdest, like spookiest, like vocal stuff. And then Piper they just started synergetically just working together and just doing these really cool, like, like 5 to 20 second long textures. And they are so cool and so useful. And they're really actually kind of a bit microtonal, and just I think that if I were saying anything, my girls are sort of naturally musical, but they're not classically musical. They did the music lessons and they did all that kind of stuff, but I think they got a little bit of me in them, in that they're not afraid to experiment and just mess around. And so maybe that's our new tagline: we're not afraid to mess around.
So you find the opportunity to use your own libraries a lot?
Yeah, I mean, it's usually a go-to for me. Um, And now it's like I'm starting to forget certain things that I have in certain libraries. So it's like I'll load stuff up like, oh wow, I have that. I forgot about that. And um but yeah, definitely for one of the things that when I was talking about the collaborators that we have like 10 different people that when we're done with the library, we basically have like let's say version 1, it's really solid. We'll send it out to these 10 people and we'll say, hey, take what we have here, the main library, and play around with the engine, create some pulses, create some leads, some basses, maybe even take some of the original raw audio and manipulate it even further. And so then what we get is a bunch of, we call them engine processed patches back. And so even a library like Cinematic Toy Piano, which you would be like, okay, what's a cinematic toy piano? Well, you'd actually have to purchase the library to understand that truly it is a cinematic library. It's got, we had um, this guy Jake who threw a bunch of the stuff through his modular system, and we ended up with all these crazy textures and loops, textures, pads, drones, all kinds of stuff. And then we had a ton of engine processed things. So you're, believe it or not, from this toy piano that's been recorded, you come up with an entire library. We like, one of the fun things I think all the demo writers love to do when they hear our libraries, I'm like, go ahead and use other sample libraries, and you know, like, show us what the toy piano sounds like with an orchestra or with like whatever else you want. And they all come back and they're like, well, I just did everything just with Triumph Audio, just with this one library. So most of the time we get demos back, they're literally people using just the one library that I asked them to demo for, and it's like it's a full on piece of music, with everything, with even cinematic toy pianos, like there's drums and you know there's basses, there's leads, there's pads, there's kind of like everything. And so it's kind of fun. So that's kind of turned into a thing now. So our one that's coming up now next is called Super Ball Bang, which is basically we took Super Ball mallets and just sampled them on a rock drum kit. There's a million things you can do with the Super Ball. We were like, let's just focus on a rock drum kit. You got the bass drum, the snare, because you got all these different size snares or all these different size drums, and then you've got a few different cymbals. And it's just like, let's try to keep it simple. Well, our simple little library now is around 300 patches. We're working on it right now, and it's got, it's like it's hovering around 4 gigabytes, and it's gonna be another big one where people are gonna want to just write demos with just the library. And you're like, how do you write a library? Or how do you write a demo for a library for Super Ball mallets with just that one library? I don't know, but people are, that's what we're doing. So
Do you have any other libraries planned after that one too?
yeah, after that is preschool, which I'm really curious. I haven't really thought exactly about how we're going to do the process side of that, if at all. I'm sure we will. But yeah, so a lot of preschool instruments that I recorded in this room, actually. Um, that's just going to be really fun. I think, it'd be like, imagine a 5-year-old sampling a bunch of preschool instruments, or playing a bunch of, preschool instruments. And it's amazing how good some of this stuff sounds, actually. You'd be like, it's not just going to be for the, the, you know, the cartoony or whatever, or it's going to, I think it'll work really well in all genres. After that, we've got a bunch of stuff on my website that I wanted to get people's opinions about. So let me look at that really quick.
And mention what the website address is.
Yeah, so we're at triumphaudio.com. Triumph is like the word triumph. So, yeah, so we have, I've got a bunch of percussion, like just all kinds of percussion that I've recorded, some industrial, some not industrial, and everything in between. I've got like a lot of manipulated industrial kind of stuff. And so I want to put that all together. Something that has to do with a lot of synthesizers and modular mangling. Um, and I got this. I haven't came up with a good name for it yet. But at first, I was going to call it Warhorn, but someone's already created that name, so I'm calling it like a hybrid horn. It's basically a sampled and manipulated trombone. Like I've added an octave with the manipulation. So it just has this really beefy hybrid kind of sound and really raw and guttural. It almost sounds like yeah, it's like a trombone on steroids. So various articulations and styled. And then I've got a lot of ethnic and world wind textures and stuff. I was thinking about combining a bunch of that together, as well as we've got some really cool kind of guitar things. So I'm trying to work. To be honest, I've been like for the last 2 years, I've been working through my back catalog of just all these ideas I've had. And each time I get to the next thing in that I want to do, like let's say it's the preschool, I'm probably going to be like, well, oh, what about banjo? Or what about that instrument? Oh, I forgot to sample that. So then I end up sampling more. I think I'm just done, right? Same with the Super Bowl library. I thought I was done. And I'm like, no, I'm not done. I just keep working at it until I feel like it's big enough, it's interesting enough, and that it has something to say. And then yeah, then I finish it up and release it and then move on to the next thing. So the other one I want to do is like a prepared piano. And I have kind of some ideas and I've done some preliminary stuff on that. So like a if it's maybe not the technical like full on prepared kind of thing, but just like playing around with the inside of a piano and just doing things like that. I think that would be fun because it's been done a bunch before, but I'd like to really try to also manipulate the sound a bunch more and not just have it all just be the raw. I mean, it sounds really cool the way it is, the raw prepared piano, but I'd like to go a little bit further with it as well.
And these are all Kontakt libraries, right? Has that been a good
Yeah.
platform, or have you considered any other ones?
Well, what would you consider another one? I know there's the free. There's one other free one,
I
which
guess,
I'm
yeah,
blanking
nothing
on the
else really
name.
comes to mind except something like a custom VST.
There's a I'm blanking on the name. I know there's a couple. There's a
Decent Sampler is
yeah.
one
I
free
think that
one.
one's free, right?
Yeah.
So I, I mean, Contact is look, the way I look at it is like the kind of people that I want buying my libraries are the kind of people that have bought Contact. So if you're like, oh, I only use Contact Player, I'd love for you to consider upgrading to, get one of the good completes from Native Instruments because like it comes with a bunch of amazing sample libraries that are good for any composer starting out or even been doing it for a while. And then Contact comes with a great, library in and of itself. That's a good, like sort of toolkit, uh, like Swiss Army knife of sample libraries, so to speak. It kind of covers a little bit of everything. And composers need that. You need to have, some good tools. So owning the full version of Contact allows you to utilize a lot of companies that don't want to be fully in the Native Instruments ecosystem, but so like we use Contact and we develop inside of Contact. But when you start doing the Contact Player, then now you're dealing with, you have to be going through, I have to go through another company. I have to be like, get my stuff approved by Native Instruments. And it's like, I'm kind of independent. I don't necessarily at this point with Triumph Audio want to be going down that route. But maybe in the future we've thought about it.
Is there any library or bundle that is the most popular?
The everything bundle. That's literally everything. That would be 13 of our libraries, all at a really good price. All of our bundles are like if you were to buy um, if you were to buy everything at regular price, and then when we bundle it, it's always 30% less. So, and in fact, it's a 30% less off of that. So let me say the math this way: if any given bundle is 30% less than the normal retail price because it's a bundle, right? But then you have to take into consideration if we have a bunch of sales going on or things are cheaper, then all of our bundles are even cheaper because of those sales. So Yeah, bundles are a good deal. But yeah, I'm just the probably one of the one libraries that was really fun and different to make was Organ Obscura, which was I have this organ right over here next to me. It's a late 1960s tube Baldwin organ, and it's just a really it's kind of like your grandma's organ, but to me it has this sound of Bernard Herrmann and of retro film scores from like the 40s and 50s, and but it's also got that great grandma cheesy kind of organ sound, and it's also has this really great sound that's sort of pre 1970s electronic organs where things maybe became a little less I don't know, just a little less analog sounding. um, so we recorded that, and that's a great example of what we do with our libraries with the authentic and the process side of things. There's some really amazing processed, just very non-organy kind of sounds that have been created using the organ as the main sound source. And then there's this really amazing fully sampled sounds of all the various stops and every on all the buttons. It doesn't have the stops, it just has the buttons or the tabs you push up and down, and it's got the great retro vibrato. And there's this really interesting thing called re-it, which I think is called, which stood for reiteration. And the re-it knob had this great stutter effect. It's like da, 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 and you can like turn the knob and it just goes from like slow to like fast, and it's like almost kind of like a weird remix thing, and but like with a 1960s organ. So we had a lot of fun with that. So that's one of my favorite libraries that's come out recently. um, just so different.
That's so cool, and it sounds like you're really pushing the boundaries. And I love hearing about
Yeah,
some of these upcoming libraries. So really looking forward to hearing about what those are like when they come out.
yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks, Kevin, for being here. Triumph Audio, everybody, triumphaudio.com. Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to share or plug while we're here?
Well, just sign up for our newsletter. You'll get a bunch of codes for two free libraries, and then we've got about 4 or 5 libraries that are only $10. There's a really great there's a tri version of Ghost Cello that is really big. It's like 1/6 of the size of the main Ghost Cello, and it's normally $30, but it's only $10 if you sign up. Yeah, and then there's 5 other libraries, actually, sorry, 6 other libraries that are like a small taste of our bigger libraries. So if you want to check out our stuff, that's a great way to do that.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Kevin. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time,
Yeah,
and I wish you the best of luck with the company, and I look forward to seeing it grow.
thanks so much. It's really fun to talk to you.